Hello, you're very welcome along to the Matchbook Champions League podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Hussey, joined by Mark O'Hare, Adrian and Clarke, and Miguel Delaney will be joining us shortly because, Adrian, it's a busy Monday, a lot of football talk. So obviously Miguel's calling calls. You've been calling calls all day. You've gone back to back to back to back to back all the way this Monday. So thanks for giving us your time today.
Oh, that's all right. Yeah, no, it's all good fun. Look, it's all talking about football. So yeah, this is not real work, is it? So happy days. It's good to look ahead to what should be an interesting week of Champions League.
Yeah, no, really looking forward to myself. Mark, you had a quiet weekend yourself?
Supposed to keep that one quiet, Dan. I was
yeah.
over in Limerick on a stag do, and it was a bit rowdy, so a bit frosty this morning, but or this afternoon even, but getting back to the land of the living. So
no, listen, and what a incredible Champions League week we have coming up. Some interesting ties to get through. So we'll get straight into it. If you are listening to us on your podcast feed, do hit us that 5-star review, would be much appreciated. And if you are watching on the YouTube, hit that thumbs up, makes all the difference. Comment and subscribe for free, completely free to do so, and you'll get these videos as soon as we go live or after post recording. Chelsea versus Real Madrid, the first game. Frank Lampard chat here, so looking forward to this. We'll have a look at the betting that we have at matchbook.com. You can back Chelsea at 3.0. This is the 90-minute odds, obviously. Real Madrid 2.52. The draw is available at 3.65. Both teams to score yes is available at 1.74 with no 2.18. The Asian handicap line sees start odds on at 1.8 for this game is currently set at 2.5, shaded a bit towards the over. So Mark, take me straight into a bit of Frank Lampard talk. Look, I caught up with the match today, highlights on Brighton. Brighton fully deserved it. Chelsea were all over the place. It's now 3 defeats in a row for Frank Lampard, or as producer Ryan told me just before we went on. 1 win in 17 is in his last games as manager for both Chelsea and Everton.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to say I'm kind of surprised, but I'm really not. Results were never consistently good under Graham Potter, but I did think there was a couple of signs in both boxes that there were incremental improvements before he was abruptly sacked. Never felt like the right fit, but if you appoint a project manager and then you remove him after 5 months, it's just beggars belief. But we've done that to death, really, with Potter and Chelsea, and to then go to Frank Lampard after starting the season with Thomas Tuchel just feels like it's not just 1 or 2 steps back. It's a town. Chelsea have stood still at the very best since he's been in post. They've probably actually regressed a little. Actually, I should probably correct myself there, because it's a surprise, I guess, because we were told Frank knows the stadium, Frank knows the club, Frank knows the training ground, and Frank knows all the staff and the tea lady. So everything should be brilliant. But of course, I'm being flippant there. But there's no new manager bounce whatsoever, really, in Chelsea. And yeah, they have got worse. They were dreadful at the weekend. But I guess if you go back to the first leg in Madrid against Real, João Felix, if he scores that opportunity, we don't know what might have happened thereafter. But for 80 minutes after Chelsea started brightly in Madrid, there was such a difference between the two teams. Madrid just toyed with Chelsea for the most part. They didn't need to get out of second gear. And whilst the scoreline said 2-0, there was a complete difference in quality between the two. You could say the red card tipped things in their favour, but it didn't, because that happened after the hour mark. So then you played half an hour against 10 men. What I find hard to kind of work my head around with Chelsea is they do have players of real ability, players of promise, players who can do damage against any opposition in the world, but just complete lack of direction, a lack of leadership, no plan whatsoever on or off the pitch. As you say, 3 defeats now in Chelsea, boss for Lampard since his return, but they've been disorganised. They've looked poor in midfield, made stupid mistakes, impotent in possession. When they have created big chances, they've missed them. On occasions, it's been a mix of all of that. I think we saw that against Real Madrid and Brighton, who really exposed those flaws. But I don't see how you can hit any sort of stability or continuity when Lampard's already used 3 different formations, and he switched 3 of his back 4. He switched 2 of his front 3. The midfield shape has changed from game to game. So how can you expect massive improvement when there's just no clear direction or position of travel? So I wouldn't normally get involved in a team who've got a 2-0 first leg lead, especially away from home. There's no need, there's no urgency for them to go and get a second result. But to me, coming into this match, the obvious and the most straightforward selection here is to be with Real Madrid. And I'll be pragmatic because of the need, not the needs to go and win this game. But Real Madrid +0 on the Asian handicap at 184. just feels obvious. It feels almost too big. So they're a team who La Liga is gone. The major focus for them now is the Champions League. We know about their history in this competition. They have been resting and rotating with this competition in mind. We've seen in recent weeks how good they can be, destroying Barcelona in the Copa del Rey, for example. And ultimately, it comes down to a level of trust. So even if Real Madrid don't need to win this game, I would trust Carlo Ancelotti to get a tune out of a Real Madrid team, or do a job, should I say, on a Chelsea side led by Lampard. The Chelsea side haven't won in 6, have won 5 games in the last 24, have scored 2 goals or more in only 4 of those 24 games, and their only home wins since October have come against Dynamo Zagreb, Leeds, Crystal Palace, Bournemouth and Dortmund, and they failed to even score in 6 of their last 14 at Stamford Bridge. So I think it's very difficult to make a case for Chelsea, even at 3.0. And I do believe if their name wasn't Chelsea and this was Team A versus Team B, they would be bigger than 3.0 to win the game. So, yeah, happy to be with Real Madrid, but I'll be playing it slightly safer because they've already got a 2-goal lead and advantage in this tie.
Okay, great analysis as always there from Mark O'Hare. Before we move on to Adrian, Mark, Scott Parker is better than Frank Lampard, according to Owen on the YouTube comments. If you had to have a manager in your mid-table Premier League club, in all seriousness, in the 2 words it'll take, Scott Parker or Frank Lampard?
Yeah, I probably would have Scott Parker.
Scott Lampard, sorry, that sounds like a terrible fusion of the two. Scott Parker, wow, that is interesting. Okay, Adrian, over to you. Can you give us the case for Chelsea before maybe going completely against them and making the case for Madrid?
I'd have gone Parker too, probably. Yeah.
Oh.
I can't make any case for Chelsea. Sorry. Yeah, I was on a podcast. When was it? At the back end of last week, and one of my colleagues was asked what percentage chance did Chelsea have of progressing to the next round, and they said 0, which I just thought was incredible. Really, just completely wrote off their prospects. And this, of course, was the morning after our television colleagues in the UK had been saying like it's evenly poised, 50-50, home leg to come, which was just bizarre punditry at the back end of that match. They won at a canter. Real Madrid didn't get out of second gear. I know that's a cliche, but they didn't. They won 2-0, and they had 10 shots on target in that game without pushing themselves. I just felt that the pace of Vinicius and Rodrigo is just too much. Too much for Chelsea's rear guard to handle, whether they go back 4, back 3, whatever the personnel is. I don't know if they can handle that. I just don't. And across the rest of the team, because Real Madrid are much more of a team, a more well-oiled machine, I just can see them toying with Chelsea again in front of their own fans and making it a pretty tortuous evening for the home supporters at Stamford Bridge. I mean, it could happen because football's football, but I cannot see any scenario right now where Chelsea make this a competitive tie. I know they've got talent. The only thing really is if they get an early red card or something, Real Madrid, and or a major decision goes Chelsea's way, maybe then the tide will turn. But yeah, I think this is going to be comfortable. So 10 shots on target for Real Madrid against Chelsea, playing 50%, if that. At the weekend, Brighton had 10 shots on target at the Bridge.
Wow.
I think they had 26 shots in total. That was a battering. And if Brighton can batter Chelsea there, even though they had made a lot of changes, then I certainly think Real Madrid can. I thought it was a bit bizarre, actually, to make so many changes. But there you go. Yeah, I get where Mark's coming from. I initially thought, yeah, Real Madrid, no bet. And then the more I thought about it, I just thought, let's just go on the nose. I think it's 2.52. So yeah, it feels like it should be a little bit shorter, Real Madrid. So I'll stick that up as my selection.
Yeah, that's Real Madrid 2.54 for Adrian. Mark's going a little safer option, drawn about 1.84, which we'll side with on the podcast, but both the guys' bets will be available on Matchbook Insights. I just couldn't believe watching the game last week and seeing Chelsea's bench, how they could be so bad, like considering like it's probably one of the best benches I've seen, at least by star name. So
but they're not a team yet, are they, Daniel? That's the thing. They're just, Real Madrid have been a team for a long time. Not really changed a lot, have they? And that, I think, plays into their advantage in these cup ties, because there's a lot of familiarity with Chelsea. I don't know. Does anyone feel sort of settled there and know what they're doing? I'm not sure.
Yeah, fascinating game still, particularly in those first few minutes to see how Chelsea set up in general, or what that team will be perhaps. And we'll go to the second game, which is another huge game here, and tie all Serie A tie between Napoli and Milan, the tie in the balance. We'll take a look at the betting that we currently have on Matchbook.com. You can back Napoli at 1.79, again 90-minute odds here. AC Milan 5.5. The draw is available at 3.85. Both teams to score yes is available at 1.95, with no slightly shorter at 1.93. The Asian handicap line sees Milan get a 3/4 of a goal head start at 1.93, and the total for this game is 2.5. So Adrian, yeah, we'll stick with you in this game. Just your thoughts firstly on the first leg, how that went, and look, it's evenly poised here. I'm really fascinated by this game. It's massive for Napoli, just given their recent form,
Beautifully poised, isn't it? Yeah, it really is. Look, my thoughts on the first leg are that Napoli were really unlucky. I mean, they went at them and they created chance after chance after chance. They found the goalkeeper Maignan in great form. I mean, he's a top keeper, isn't he? The man between the sticks for Milan. He's got an aura about him. He's got a real presence, and I think he played a big part in that. Obviously, some wasteful finishing in there, but yeah, considering they didn't have Osimhen, and considering Milan had got the better of them quite comfortably in the previous few meetings, it was a little bit surprising how well Napoli created chances there, but they couldn't take them. And as we sort of predicted on this podcast, Milan played on the counter, didn't they? And they scored a great goal on the break. Lovely bit of skill, wasn't it? Was it Brahim Diaz to open up space in midfield, and Benassa in his tracky bottoms finished it off. Not sure I'm having that, tracky bottoms or skins or whatever, if you're a grown up. But yeah, it was a good win for Milan, but and everything sort of now points towards them going through because of the suspensions for Kim and Gisa. But I can't back them. I can't actually side with Milan based on that first leg, based on the season as a whole. And with Osimhen fit, he came on, didn't he, at the weekend for a bit? I think he hit the woodwork. I think Napoli are going to tear at them and really show who's boss. I think that's how I see it. There's a lot of payback there. They've been beaten the last 3 home games against Milan. I mean, they've beaten them at the Diego Maradona Stadium for since 2018. So it's a bit of a bogey team, but Napoli have been so good this season. I don't think they've come this far to go out with a whimper. That's my sort of take on it ahead of the game. So even though they're depleted, I think there'll be a steely focus. They're not in good form. 3 blanks in their last 4 games. Only won 2 of their last 5 at home. Only won 5 of their last 10 at home. So they're not in the best of form. But they were sort of the favourites on this side of the draw for a reason, because they've been so good this year. And I think they're going to throw everything at Milan and just about do it. So what am I going to do? I'm going to go with Napoli, but they're a bit short at that price. So if you go Napoli and over 1.5 goals, taking out the 1-0, it goes to 2.28. And I think that's quite an attractive price to be on side with the home side. So yeah, it should be a good game. Napoli will make sure it's a good game because they've got to go for it. And I think they'll win the game. Might go to extra time though.
Yeah, could be one of those games. Could be a long night. Napoli and over 1.5 goals section. Adrian, Clarke at 2.28. And Mark, a little bit on Napoli. You were the leader of this fan club. Napoli were tipped up on this Champions League podcast, very podcast, at 151.0 outright, and they've gotten a bit of luck with the draw. But that first leg, and just maybe their recent form more domestically in general, are you a little bit concerned going into the second leg on them?
A little bit, not necessarily domestic form, because I think all eyes have been on this tie in recent weeks. And as Adrian says, the first leg, they'll feel shortchanged by that because they really came out for the battle straight away. They could have scored 2 goals inside the first 10 minutes. They could have scored their first attack, actually. And they did dominate the majority of that match. They only conceded 2 shots on target, but they did look a little bit jittery when possession was turned over in those transitions and counters. And that's where Milan can really hurt them, because they do have quality. They've got a bit of everything going forward on those counterattacks: pace, trickery, ability, physicality as well, with Giroud leading the line. A big bonus though for Napoli is the ultras have been in kind of a bit of a feud with the owner Aurelio De Laurentiis in recent weeks, but they had a bit of a sort of a catch up over the weekend. They smoothed a few things out, and in recent home matches, there's been some silent protests. Not all the ultras have turned up and created the usual atmosphere, whereas it seems to have been resolved. So the Diego Maradona Stadium should be bouncing this midweek, because this is a hugely historic occasion for Napoli. They've never been this far in the European competition, so I'm expecting it to be a wild atmosphere. And I fancy Napoli to play on the front foot yet again, and I fancy them to score, obviously, with Osimhen back in the team. But as Adrian says, there's a couple of key absentees now down the spine, Kim and Anguissa, who I know Anguissa's form in recent weeks hasn't been as good as it was at the start, but I think both would probably make a European team of the season because of their performances this campaign, and that they are big losses. And the fact that Milan can play on the counter-attack does, to me, suggest that they can get on the score sheet and hurt Napoli in this match. But I thought, I'm just surprised with the goal lines here, because over 2.5 goals is the outsider and BTTS is the outsider of the two as well. I can't see how this is going to be a quiet, low-scoring match. I could only see it being quite explosive, and I think the atmosphere will contribute to that, and I think Napoli's approach will too. Ultimately, it's the second leg of a Champions League knockout tie. We know history tells us traditionally that these legs do tend to be the highest scoring of the two because desperation, jeopardy creeps in the first half, second half, last half hour, whatever it might be. Kitchen sinks get chucked about, and I can just see that happening on Tuesday night here in Naples. So, yeah, fully expect Napoli to score, but I just think those defensive personnel missing give Milan an opportunity. We've got some outstanding forwards on show from either side, expecting fireworks on and off the pitch as well. So, really, really looking forward to this game. And I think over 2.5 goals, which this morning was 2.18. I can see it's now 2.1 on Matchbook. To me, is the best bet in this match.
Wow, okay. Expecting goals, Mark O'Hare and Miguel. For what it's worth, you are siding with the guys with the Real Madrid pick at agreement on the podcast away to Chelsea. Just a quick word line on that, and then into this Napoli-Milan game. It's just a season defining for Napoli. I know they'll have the Serie A, but to get to a Champions League semi-final would just be massive for them.
Yeah, so sorry I'm a bit late. Just had work, and I've just realised I'm sitting here in the football jersey I have to play in tonight. Didn't no bets on that. Real Madrid. I mean, I will actually. We'll get to this in the correct scoreline later, but I'm almost thinking kind of just a low scoring but extremely comfortable Real Madrid win. A little like the first leg. I have to say, even allowing for everything, I was really struck by there was almost an arrogance to Real Madrid and how much better they knew they were than Chelsea. Thibaut Courtois did raise a slight possibility they might pay the price for not scoring more goals, but it's just the difference in quality. And I might have a bit more confidence in Chelsea had Lampard kind of offered something rousing or something emotional in his first home game back on Saturday, but then they lost to that and were destroyed by Brighton. Really, I do think, as we'll get into, 3 of the ties are pretty one-sided and difficult to see overturns, bar, I think, Napoli Milan. Now, looking at the prices, maybe I should have gone towards Mark's bet, given that there's not that much difference. But I have a feeling for Napoli here. I think there's going to be... The lads have already referenced some of the context about how the game has changed. I think the Ultras being back on board is absolutely huge. I think the fact, as you say, that, okay, the league is still to be won, but that's had a kind of a more, I don't want to say relaxed tone about it, but it's been a bit more of a procession for the last few months. Just the tone of it has been different, where this is pretty much at least a European season now, and with more on stake because of what it could mean if they go out, or what the performance is like. And I think, standing out this week in particular, we're going to see a proper Champions League occasion. In fact, I'm a little envious that I'm not that I should be complaining again about being Real Madrid. I'm at Stamford Bridge tomorrow for what is probably going to be a kind of a fait accompli, whereas I think Napoli-Milan is going to be the game. And I can see it going back and forth, high scoring. I got to take what Marcus said as well. And I tell you, they do look a little bit nervous in possession, but equally, Kvaratskhelia should have scored in the first minute of the game. And I think there'll be definitely goals, but I'm going to go that little bit further and say Napoli are going to win.
Okay, yeah, Napoli over 1.5 goals, a choice of Adrian and Miguel, 2.28. We'll lock in Mark again on over 2.5 goals. This gives us that for security, but I can see most people, if they're only one screening, Chelsea Madrid for that first half, and then eyes very much on Napoli Milan for the second half when it gets to the business end. So that's Tuesday's games covered. And look, we'll try and drum up a bit of a drama ahead of these Wednesday games, but Miguel touched on they could potentially be decided already or very much one-sided. But we'll take a look at the betting first on Inter Benfica before getting to the big one. Inter currently 2-0 up in the leg and available in the 90-minute match odds at 2.2. Benfica 3.6. The draw is 3.65. Both teams to score yes is a favourite in this market at 1.79. The Asian handicap line sees Benfica get a quarter of a goal head start at 2.08, and the total for this is 2.5. So Adrian, over to you on this one. You're the only one with a bet here, so look, take it away. Yeah, there you go. That just shows you, doesn't it?
Wow, crazy. There, look, it's Benfica have hit a bit of a wall, haven't they? They've lost 3 in a row, lost to Porto, then they lost the first leg. I talked about it last week. I didn't say that Benfica weren't going to win the game, but I did say that the occasion could get to them because Inter have got more experienced players, etc. And maybe that's a case of what we saw. It was a pretty sort of polished professional away win, wasn't it, from Inter against the Benfica team that sort of tensed up. And then, of course, at the weekend, and they didn't rest that many, they lost to Chavez. I think that's how you say it, in the league, which now means that they're certainly not assured of winning the domestic title. So there's a lot. There's going to be a real test of nerve, I think, for Roger Schmidt and his players. They're not in a good place. Three of their last 4 games have gone unders as well. They've stopped scoring goals. Now, that's where I'm heading. It's towards the unders because Inter don't have to win the game, obviously, and they've got themselves that 2-0 lead. And I think a club like Inter are capable of just keeping Benfica at arm's length in this kind of scenario. The last thing they want is a free-for-all. I don't know what the opposite of a free-for-all is, but that's what Inter will try to make sure happens. And their games very rarely get out of hand anyway. I was looking back over the last couple of months. The last 15 matches for Inter Milan, 13 of them have gone under 2.5 goals, win, lose, or draw. So, they're not involved in many high-scoring games. They haven't scored in their last 3 at the San Siro, which is obviously concerning. They lost against Monza, didn't they, at the weekend, which wasn't great. So they're not in brilliant form either. But I do think that they've done the hard work getting the 2-goal lead. I think they're capable of killing the game against the Benfica that just aren't playing anywhere near as well as they were. It's a low on confidence Benfica that travels to Italy. So, yeah, I see this being 0-0, 1-0, 2-0 max, or it could be 1 apiece, of course. But all of those results are covered by under 2.5.
Okay, yeah, under 2.5 seems to be the right play here. 1.97 currently for Adrian. As I touched on, Mark and Miguel, no bets here. So we will crack on with Bayern versus Manchester City and take a look at the betting that we have on Matchbook.com. Interesting. We'll go to you first on this, Miguel, once we look at prices. Be interested to get your assessment of that first leg with City 3-0 winners and Bayern go into this game on Matchbook in the 90-minute odds. Currently available at 2.84. City favourites, despite being 3-0 up, 2.48. The draw is 4.0. Both teams to score. I always laugh at these short prices, but 1.53 maybe wouldn't want to back against them myself. The Asian handicap lines is a draw no bet market. Shaded City, the good bit favourites there at 1.86, and the total for this game is 3.5. That's shaded a good bit towards the under, given the high goal line. So yeah, Miguel, take it away. I know you wrote a piece on this straight after kickoff. Just maybe perhaps it points to maybe a larger scale in terms of financial disparity, perhaps between not just the Premier League and Bayern, but particularly these big clubs like City that can just afford to get the best players. But was it as much as that, or was it just that Bayern got it so wrong on the night, or a bit of both?
Well, it's a bit strange, this game. I mean, first of all, there obviously at present isn't quite a financial chasm between, well, there's not a financial chasm between Bayern Munich and City in terms of what they can spend due to FFP. But obviously, one is a 50+1 owned club with a lot of expensive shareholders, and one is owned by a state with everything that entails. With that, I mean, and from that perspective as well, City are at the very top of the Premier League in that regard, with the Premier League already pretty much cannibalizing a lot of European football, as we've discussed before. But I mean, it was quite a strange game in that I felt Bayern were good value for parts of it, and showed that with the way Tuchel sets up and some of the weapons they have, they could match City if everything went their way. But it still felt that was kind of like hanging on or kind of onto the coattails of what City can be. And in the moments when City stepped it up, they really brutally exploited Bayern. Now, Guardiola argued afterwards, and he would say this, I suppose, that this is what they do all the time. It's just a case for once in the Champions League, it worked for City in both boxes. And there is maybe a degree of truth to that. They took their chances. They didn't see kind of any of these strange moments where it doesn't go in. At the other end, there were a few desperate blocks from City players. So Ruben Diaz had a particularly good game. But I think overall, it's more that Bayern pretty much have to adapt to what City do, because City are a better team with a much higher ceiling right now. I think, again, the recent history of the Champions League means you can never rule anything out, although I think we're getting pretty close to, because it doesn't, when that's happened in previous seasons, it's almost like there's been, like the phrase I've used before when writing about it, is this emotional contagion in which it almost felt like it happened like when Giroud did the scorpion kick, and then suddenly you saw scorpion kicks all the time. An element of that happened with performance where one team saw a comeback, and then suddenly that, as soon as a game changed, it was a goal, they all thought it was on. That hasn't really been the feel of the Champions League this season. And I think this would be more like, say, ironically, a Bayern Munich home game when Guardiola was in charge, but lost 3-0, which was against Messi's Barcelona. In that season, they won the treble in 2015. I was at the return leg, and it was one like Bayern actually scored quite early, but it was proper back and forth and almost like a bit of a free-for-all because of the nature of the game. Bayern only had an outside chance. And I think this will be similar, that City will always have them at arm's length, but it could become a bit of a chaotic match. So I'm going for over 3.5, which actually isn't that generous, I suppose. Maybe that's a reflection of how these second legs go.
Okay, 2.4 the price there. As we mentioned, the high goal line, 3.5. Mark, I am fascinated by how this game sets up, and Miguel touched on and set up well in the sense that it could be a chaotic and free-for-all because Bayern is the only way they can get back into the game. So how do you see those first 10, 15, 20, 25 minutes going? Is it just Bayern all-out attack trying to get as much possession as possible, or are they going to try and play a little bit more coyer than that?
I think they'd be wise to try and temper it. I think they will be front foot. I think they will be proactive, but I think it'd be foolish to kind of go all out from the first minute against this Man City team. We've seen enough Champions League football to know that no scoreline after the first leg is impossible. But overturning a 3-0 deficit against Man City looks a really tall order. And I guess unlike what we saw with Thomas Tuchel when he took charge of Chelsea immediately after Lampard, when there was a really immediate and obvious upturn, that's not been the case since he replaced Nagelsmann in Munich, because domestic displays and performances, you could argue, have actually regressed, and you kind of question the timing of his, not necessarily his appointment, but the decision to remove Nagelsmann. I felt they had a better chance to progress with Tuchel in charge because of his style, because of his approach. And I actually thought they were pretty good value for the most part at the Etihad, particularly after an hour when the only difference between the two teams was a wonder strike. I thought they'd showed a few signs of nerves at the back, but I think they had managed the match pretty well. But obviously those nerves at the back eventually proved their downfall, and you make a stupid error, a preventable error, between Upamecano and Sama, and City smelt blood, and in that last 20 minutes or so you really saw their class. But take out the error, take out the wonder strike, I didn't think there was a huge amount between the two teams. I think you could definitely see why they were rated the first and second in the outright market going into that game. But yeah, just taking you back to the betting, I don't know, when I see Bayern Munich plus a quarter goal at home at 1.8 or bigger, irrespective of the opposition, you've got to take an interest. Man City are 3-0 up after the first leg. They don't need to win here. There is no requirement for them to go out and finish the job with another 3-0 victory. So to see them as favourites in Munich doesn't feel right to me. I do expect a bounce back emotionally, physically, whatever it might be from Bayern Munich. They'll be hurt. They'll be embarrassed by what happened at the Etihad. They're now at home. As I say, I did feel they were competitive for the most part, bar a couple of errors. And obviously, if you take the selection that I'm nominating here, you basically make money if they don't lose here at home to Man City, which I know City could easily go out and play full throttle for 90 minutes and win this game again, but they don't need to. And I think that's the thing that's really holding you back about that City price. Sub 2.5 away at Bayern Munich when you don't need to win just doesn't do it for me. We know the market absolutely loves Man City. Bayern were the biggest price they'd been in a Champions League game for well over a decade going into that first leg. I thought the move had gone well too far. Clearly, the final result proved I was probably wrong. But yeah, I cannot remember, and I haven't done the research to check, but I imagine it's going to be a very, very long time since Bayern Munich were underdogs in Munich for any match against any opposition in any competition. I'd be surprised if anyone wanted to back Man City at sub 2.5 away at Bayern, considering what the state of play is in this match. So, yeah, for that reason and that reason only, I have to be a Bayern plus a quarter here. I expect an improvement, and I expect them to be very, very determined to obviously appreciate they probably will go out, but put on a better show for 90 minutes.
Yeah, Mark touched on it there, Adrian. It is set up for a fascinating title. I personally found it even more fascinating that Haaland was. They almost declared and took him out of half time ready for this. So look, Pep still thinks there's a game here. I think that proves that with that substitution anyway.
For sure. Yeah, it was one of several substitutions, wasn't it, against Leicester? They almost backfired, actually. They got a little bit sloppy, didn't they, in that second half. Yeah, I agree completely with both the lads, really. For me, Bayern were pretty impressive for an hour. I thought they have the tools to kind of go toe-to-toe with Manchester City more than most teams in European football. I thought it was a really high standard game, higher than any World Cup game could get. This was two proper teams. But by the end, Bayern were a trembling wreck, weren't they? I mean, they were all over the gaff and could easily have conceded 4 or 5. I think Bayern would prefer Neuer in goal than Sommer, even though he made a few saves. I don't think he's got that same presence. But look, the game state suggests Bayern have to go for the win. Measured to a degree, I agree with Mark, but they're going to go for it. They'll look for a fast start, and on their own patch, they're good, very good, aren't they? We know that. I know they drew at the weekend in Bundesliga, but in the Champions League, 4 wins, 4 clean sheet wins at home. In the Champions League, going back last 20 matches at the Allianz, they've won 17 of those 20, so they're very reliable. And City don't have to win, and that is massive. You can't underestimate that. But also away from home, and I know a lot of these games are going back a bit, but apart from the win at Arsenal in the Premier League, they lost at Man United, they lost at Spurs, they lost at Liverpool, they drew at Newcastle, they drew at Villa. In the Champions League this season, City drew at Leipzig, drew at Dortmund, drew in Copenhagen. So away from home, they haven't exactly been a winning machine against better side. So I think this is a tough task for them to get the double win against Bayern Munich. If they achieve it, that would be absolutely fantastic for Pep's team. So, but I'm not so sure about that. So I'm going to follow Mark in on it, but maybe just go a little bit safer, I suppose, a little bit slightly different. Go with Bayern draw no bet, which comes in at a better price. Obviously, you only get your money back if it's a draw, but at 2.12, it's quite attractive, isn't it? So the only situation where you lose money is City to win.
Okay, Bayern. I think we'll lock that in as the podcast pick. Bayern drawn up at market over evens 2.12. Goals for Miguel over 3.5 at 2.4 currently on Matchbook, and Mark with a safer option with Bayern plus a quarter of a goal. Still a decent and backable price of 1.82. So the guys are leaning in general to Bayern putting up a performance against City. And as we touched on, Pep Guardiola doesn't think it's over for sure. So we'll get into our long shot section here. A couple of big prices being put up here, and the shortest of them all, Mark, is your pick of 14.5. So really tasty price here. But it is the sort of game the scoreline, that I can just see happening in this game.
Yeah, I don't normally like backing teams who don't necessarily need to win, but I'm going to make an exception. It's the long shot section, and 14.5 on Real Madrid repeating that 2-0. First leg of win away at Chelsea feels about right to me. They will be putting everything into this. I just can't see how Chelsea can contain Benzema and Vinicius in particular for 90 minutes. They'll have to play front foot at some stage and force the issue, and that should play into Real Madrid's hands. You do love to counter-attack, play in transitions. They're so efficient. They can be so effective as well, as Barcelona found out not so long ago. So, it feels about right. I looked at Real Madrid to win under 2.5 goals, which gets the 1-0 and the 2-0 onside, but it's only 6.0, so this felt like the obvious next step. So, 14.5 on the correct score on Real Madrid.
Okay, yeah, well, that's currently the best price by far. The sportsbooks, majority of them, 11, 12.0. So already 14.5, by far the best on the odds checker grid. The same, Miguel Delaney. For your pick, Napoli 3, Milan 1 here. So again, you were expecting that chaotic, well, like that was for the other game, but you're expecting goals and a lot of them here.
Yeah, I mean, goals safer, but I just have a gut feeling on this. 3-1, I'm going for. I think, give it again. We mentioned the Ultras being back. At least a feeling of unity for this game for Napoli. It'll be interesting what happens if they go out, maybe. But I think Napoli are going to come out charging. I know they had that sedate, disappointing 0-0 draw at the weekend, but it feels like that's one of those situations where it's all kind of everyone is thinking about this game, and I think they're going to come out roaring. I think we might see something similar to early in the season, but even allowing for the injuries and the absences. But the issue, of course, is whether they can convert an early chance in the way they didn't do the San Siro. If they do, I think 3-1. And I think, I meing, Adrian mentioned the record as well. I think that they'll feel they owe Milan one as well. And I mean, those sort of things can work in a form. I know it can be dangerous to get into that sort of thinking, about hot hands or reverse hot hands and who's due win against someone else. But it's more so how that kind of emotionally informs the game and the level that Napoli will want to go to. By the same token, it's why if Real Madrid and Man City meet in the semis, I must say I'd probably heavily fancy Man City there just for revenge for last year. But we'll see how that pans out for here. 3-1, just it was when I was thinking of the game beforehand, it was just what came out to me. Good feeling almost.
Okay, and bonus semi-final tips already from Miguel. So if he changes his mind within the next few days ahead of Monday's recording, Adrian, over to you price, again.
Mick. Yeah.
Bayern 3, City 1. So you are expecting them to go really, really close here because that's only a 1 goal off getting into.
Well, I just thought it's a fun punt, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's what these long shots are sometimes all about. And look, Miguel's put up over 3.5 goals already. He can see it being that type of game. I could as well, to a degree. I think it would be more open than. I mean, it was open, but Bayern had chances, didn't they? It was a brilliant block, wasn't there, from Diaz, and Edison at the start of the second half was pretty busy. Is forced into action. You think at the Allianz Arena, packed out crowd there, baying for this amazing comeback. It's not that difficult to imagine a wave building up if Bayern were to score a goal. And yeah, I can just see them pushing it close, but maybe not close enough. So yeah, look, as we've already outlined, both teams to score is a write-off. Everyone, the price is so short. Everyone thinks both teams are going to score. It's not that much of a stretch to go to Bayern 3, Manchester City 1, and price of 22.0 is it's worth 50p, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Tempting one for those to watch. And again, check out these on Odds Checker before the offer and the match with Bet and Exchange. Invariably, we will be best price. 19.0, the best on the sports books there. I think one is 21.0. Matchbook 22.0 stand out price. Adrian, we'll stick with you. Good for your best bet. And you were the only bet on this game, so it was an easy podcast selection. But you're sticking to your guns here as the best bet. Inter versus Benfica. So not one to watch. Maybe watch the other game and then.
Yeah, the other guy. Yeah, I'm a little bit surprised that the other guys didn't want to have a little dabble here. I don't know. It just feels as if Inter, despite their poor form domestically, are putting all of their eggs in the Champions League basket, and they've got themselves into absolute pole position. And Benfica have hit a real flat spot at the wrong time. 3 successive defeats, not scoring goals. Do we really think that Inter are going to allow this to be a chaotic match that goes end to end? I just can't really see that scenario unfolding. As I said earlier, 13 of the last 15 matches for Inter Milan have gone under 2.5, which is pretty favourable in terms of that figure. So to get under 2.5 for this one, to make it 14 and 16, to get pretty much even money, 1.97. Yeah, I'm all over that.
Okay, and Mark, over to you. The opposite end of the scale, but your best bet in the Champions League card is in the Napoli-Milan game, over 2.5 goals.
Yeah, always a little bit nervous when you take a view against the market, but I am surprised that BTTS and over 2.5 goals are trading close to even money in this match, considering the lay of the land and everything we've talked about previously on the podcast. The fact that the Ultras are back, there is going to be a white-hot atmosphere. at the Maradona Stadium. Osimhen back to lead the line for Napoli, which just gives them that extra edge. And missing two of their best players down the spine of the side, which weakens them defensively and gives Milan even more opportunity to play in transitions and hurt them in those counter-attacks where they do have players of real ability. So, yeah, I just think the flow of the game, the way in which the first leg went, I wouldn't be too surprised if we saw something similar. And I think it's worth noting as well, obviously we've got two Italian teams here. The first leg was pretty fiery, plenty of cards dished out. There could easily be a red, possibly more than just one, knowing these two teams and just what's at stake here. And if there is, obviously that tips the balance either way and gives you an even more opportunity for a high scoring game. So very happy to be with over 2.5 goals in that match.
Okay, so over 2.5 Napoli Milan for Mark O'Hare as his best bet. Unders for Benfica, Inter for Adrian. And Miguel, take it away on your best bet.
Yeah, I must say it was a little bit tricky to sort this week. Hang on. Sorry, I actually just realised I didn't put it in the sheet. So
that you're building the suspense for us, Miguel.
sorry. I got distracted as I was putting it in, basically. From a guy, it's been that sort of afternoon.
Yeah, football wise, yeah, a lot going on. Look, I was saying to Adrian, a lot going on Monday after a busy football weekend. You know,
it's based. So I'm thinking essentially of going with Bayern City again goals. I was almost tempted to do a correct score here, but I think probably even the over 3.5 is the smartest. I just think they'll be back in work. In fact, if people want to go this direction, I would go Bayern 3, City 2. That's not a best bet though. That's a long shot, and I think much safer and one I can see going for is over 3.5 goals here.
Okay, we are expecting goals and plenty of them in Bayern versus Manchester City. Guys, you've set up this Champions League tie nicely. There are games that need comebacks, but to me, there just seems to be a little bit of a chance there. There'll be plenty switching channels between the 4 games. My thanks to Mark, Adrian, and Miguel. We'll all be back on Thursday. It'll be a fusion between FA Cup semi-final action and the Premier League before next week's weekend football podcast then as well. So my thanks to the guys. We will chat to you on Thursday. Enjoy the Champions League football. Take care. Bye-bye.